In this video, I'm building a floating TV console to mount under a wall-mounted television. It's meant to disappear into the space. The console has multiple storage compartments with an open shelf for media devices and built-in power outlets hidden in the back. Let's get started. I wanted the front panels to be thicker, but only thinner boards were available, so I decided to add a backing layer and hide the exposed edge. First, I'll start by cutting the pieces I'll need for the edges. For the backing layer, I'm using 5.5mm plywood. I cut it slightly oversized. Once everything is cut, I glue it in place. To spread the glue, I'm using a trowel normally used for flooring panels. After the glue dries, I trim it down to the final size. Next, I set the saw blade depth to match the edge pieces and make a cut. A router or a table saw would work here, but since I'm working indoors, I'm using a plunge saw instead. That's satisfying. Then I glue the edge pieces on. Once it's dry, I shave off a thin layer with the saw to remove the step. I made 2 panels at once, so I cut them in half here. I do the same cut on the short edges. Then I glue the edge pieces on this side as well. After trimming off the excess, the edge treatment is complete. Finally, I cut a 45-degree bevel on the bottom to make it easier to grab. I finished it off with 240 grit sandpaper using a random orbital sander. And finally, the front panel is done. The main body is built from plywood, as usual. This time, I needed a bit more strength, so I chose 24mm Lowen plywood. The 18mm parts for the drawers are cut using a sliding circular saw. Lowen plywood tends to chip when cut, so I protect the cut line with masking tape. The main body is assembled mostly with pocket holes. There is one area where the holes would be visible, so that part is glued instead, although I try to avoid that whenever possible. The drawers are fastened from the sides with wood screws, so I drill the holes at the halfway point of the 18mm panels, about 9mm in, using a drill press. The main body is too large to fit on the drill press, so those holes are drilled by hand. Because the screws are long, I use a drill guide to keep everything straight. Next, I apply edge banding. This is the type that doesn't require an iron. The edge banding sticks out slightly from the panel, but the excess will be sanded off later. The body is too large to sit on the workbench, so I work on the floor instead. The workspace is very tight, so there's no room for a large assembly table. This section is for the shelf that holds the Blu-ray player. Since the holes would be visible here, I decided to glue this part in place. Because my home is small, moving large furniture is always a challenge, so I transport everything in separate pieces and assemble it at the installation site. That's why most of the structure is designed to be screwed together. Finally, I sand everything with 240 grit paper using a random orbital sander. At this stage, I also clean up the edges and remove any excess edge banding. Finishing time. I'm using a tinted varnish for the body, this time in black. It's not an opaque painted black, but a transparent black that still lets light through, giving it a more furniture-like finish. After 2 coats, I let it dry and sand it once with 400 grit paper. There are some heavy drips on the sides, but they won't be visible after assembly, so it's not an issue. Once sanding is done, I apply the third and final coat. The front panels are colored first using a water-based stain. After 2 coats, I sand them lightly, just like with the varnish. For the final coat, I tried a slightly darker, different color, but this was a mistake. It turned out a bit too muddy. For the final finish, I use an unrefined beeswax oil. I wipe it off right after applying it, but I clearly use too much. So I wipe it down as best as I can and move on for now. The finish is dry, so it's time for assembly. I'll start with the drawer boxes. Keeping drawers square is critical. I square mine using the bottom panel. The bottom is made from thicker material, cut carefully to keep everything square. I clamp everything to the bottom and drive the screws to lock it in place. This method usually gives me clean, square drawers. I install the drawer slides before final assembly. Next, I drill the holes for the drop-down hinges. This is done the same way I usually do it. I check the dimensions on the manufacturer's site. This makes a huge mess. Definitely need dust collection here. With the prep work done, I can start assembling the main body. I cut some scrap pieces to keep everything at an even height. Something's off here. After thinking it through, I figured out what went wrong. The spacer between the panels was facing the wrong direction. I ended up with an extra hole, but it's inside the drawer, so it won't be seen. I assembled the remaining sections the same way. The bottom panel goes in last. Then I installed the drop-down hinges. They lined up perfectly without any adjustment. The front panels are installed using a simple measured layout. I use this method all the time, and it works surprisingly well. Finally, I installed the soft down stays, the damp type. They feel a bit stiff. I may have chosen the wrong ones. They're very stiff. The door won't lower under its own weight. It still opens and closes, but I'll probably need to replace them later. For now, I'll move forward as is. A problem came up at this stage. The wax on the front panel still hasn't cured, even after 2 weeks. It's hard to tell on camera, but it feels sticky to the touch. I'm not entirely sure why this happened, but I need to figure out a solution. I tried a few things without success, so I decided to strip the finish completely. Using an orbital sander, I sand everything back with 120 grit. This is what the sandpaper looks like. The finish likely softened and redeposited. Once the finish is removed, I smooth everything out with 240 grit on a random orbital sander. I take my time here, so no deep scratches from the 120 grit are left behind. Time to refinish. I'm using Osmo Color 3163 Walnut. I apply it very thin, working it into the surface. After application, I don't wipe it off right away and let it sit for a while. For the top coat, I use Osmo Color 3101 Clear. When I finished the Western Red Cedar before, I used extra clear, but compared to that, this one is much thicker. I spread it thin the same way, using a melamine sponge. After letting it penetrate for about 20 minutes, I wipe off all the excess. Once wiping is done, I let it cure for at least 48 hours. A small tip: this is the masking film I use to protect the work surface. After use, folding it like this lets me throw everything away at once. It makes cleanup much easier, so I highly recommend it. Before installation, I remove the back panel of the TV wall to route the cables. Behind this TV setup, there are DIY-built 2x4 studs in front of the wall, and the unit is simply screwed into those, so it can be removed and reinstalled easily. Once the cables are in place, I secure the mounting angles with screws. These are standard steel angles I picked up on Amazon, small ones, but I use 7 of them in hidden positions. After fixing just 2 angles, I try to place the unit, but because the angles are small, it starts to slide down. So I take it back off for a moment and add temporary legs made from leftover 2x4 material. With that support in place, I set it back in position and screw everything down. The cables coming up from the floor are routed through holes drilled in the wall afterward. Once everything is secured, I remove the temporary legs. Structurally, it feels solid enough. Finally, I reinstall the drawers and the drop-down door. The drop-down stays are still quite stiff, and opening the door takes some effort. It's usable without much trouble, so I've actually been using it like this ever since. If you build something similar, keep this in mind.